Hey, Dave.
Hey, Counselor, how are you?
Good, Dave. How you doing?
Good, good. How's the family?
Good. Hey, Dave, I'm sorry for your loss.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much. She was a great lady, so,
Yeah.
but, it's a tough time for that to happen too, so.
You had a big family. I read the obituary. You had a lot of
Yeah, and that was just my aunts and uncles.
Yeah.
I got like something like 15, 16 cousins.
Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah. No, very sorry, Dave. So this is Livable Streets, right?
Yep. Just waiting for them to jump on.
Oh, hey, Vanessa.
Hi, Ed.
How you doing, Vanessa?
Hi, everyone. I'm doing well. How's everyone?
Good. Vanessa. Hey,
Yes.
Vanessa. You're
Yep.
staying on this call, right?
Yes, I will be staying on throughout the whole session.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Hey, Dustin.
Hey guys. Good to see
Hey,
you.
Matt.
Hey guys.
Matt.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
I don't know if you're hosting or if I am, but happy to jump in. Dave, you're on mute.
They give me the controls to this thing, and then I don't I don't know how to use it.
Okay. Also, I love that you're outside. It looks beautiful. Well, I'm happy to get started. Yeah.
Okay, if you want to get started, then I'll just admit people as they come in, and we'll go from there.
All right.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I just want to introduce, this is Louisa Gagg from Livable Streets.
Great, thanks. Host disabled attendee screen sharing. I do have a PowerPoint. If it's easier, I can email my PowerPoint to you.
Hold on one second.
Okay.
Dave, if you go to share content, there's a thing if you're the administrator that should let you allow any participants to share their screen.
Kenzie, what was that?
If you go to share content, like your option menu, when you click on that, should give you an option as the administrator to allow all participants to share screen. Like if you click share content, I think there's a settings thing then.
Hey, Dave, it's Candace. I think I may have just enabled it. So
oh, okay.
Louisa, you can try now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Awesome.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect.
All right. Can you all see my screen and hear me? Great.
Looking good, Louisa.
Starting from the beginning. So first off, I just want to thank Dave so much and Councilor Wu's office for helping set up this briefing. And I really appreciate all of you being present here on the Friday before a long weekend. And I'm hoping that this information will be helpful for you kind of as you're moving forward with the budget process, and also as you're involved with the COVID response to that involve kind of streets and transportation and those issues, as we heard in the hearing last week. So a little bit about me. My name is Louisa Gagg. I'm the Public Policy Director at Livable Streets Alliance, which is a transportation advocacy organization. So we're trying to make everything on our streets work better, whether that's our bus lanes or our bike lanes or our pedestrian signals. And today I'm going to give you an overview of the report that we released in March, right before the state of emergency was declared, around our progress report on the city's progress on implementing their Go Boston 2030 plan. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some highlights from the report, where the city's really leading, where we would like to see them pick up the pace a little bit, and what recommendations we have for them moving forward, and kind of try and weave the relevant things to COVID in throughout. So a little bit of background. Go Boston 2030 is the City of Boston's mobility plan, and it envisions a city where all residents have better and more equitable travel choices. And it was released in March of 2017, so just over 3 years ago now. And the plan includes a bunch of projects and also these sort of measurable but aspirational targets, including around mode shift, which I've included here. And it's a really great plan. We're really excited about it, or I guess we were excited about it 3 years ago. We're still excited about it now. One of the things that was really great about it was how much community engagement they did to build the plan. Thousands of Bostonians were engaged in the plan, hopefully many of you as well. So as I mentioned, there's 58 projects and policies in the plan, but the next steps for accountability, for monitoring, for continued community engagement are really not clear. They kind of nod to it in the half page of this almost 300-page report. But the plan does point out the importance of this, saying that without a mechanism to ensure that progress is being made, Go Boston 2030 might sit on the shelf. And that's why we named the title of our report Not on a Shelf, kind of nodding to this idea that we're really excited about this plan and we want to see it implemented, and that we're really kind of intending to fill this gap in this accountability and monitoring work. So we released this progress report, as I mentioned, in March, evaluating the city's progress on 33 out of the 58 projects. So just for this first report, the early action projects, which were the projects that the city wanted to complete within the first 5 years. So by 2022, which is right around the corner. And so kind of giving a status update on those projects and also evaluating their progress and whether they're on track to reach their overarching plan goals. So around safety, around access, around reliability. So what did we find? Overall, we found that the city is making progress on implementing specific projects and policies. And they've also made some really important structural changes to both the budget and kind of their operations. So the transportation department gained over 20 new staff and millions of more dollars in the budget since Go Boston 2030 was released. So it was really great to see that commitment to making this plan a reality. However, implementation of these projects has not yet demonstrated significant progress towards the overarching plan goals that I mentioned, like around reliability, around access. And yes, it's still early, but we do believe that there's more that the city can be doing to make sure that they're on track to meet their goals. And to kind of pause and make a note on COVID-19. we're seeing that many of the things that we highlighted in the report as a city being behind on are now being elevated in their rapid response. The projects that they, like, for example, the bike network, which I'll talk more about in detail later on, but that's something that now the city is focusing on building out more quickly in order to support people who are going to be getting around by bike. So we kind of want to make the point that if we had already kind of made better progress on Go Boston 2030, we would be in better shape now to respond to COVID. And so we're really seeing in real time what happens when we don't stick to our plans. And so COVID, as it's doing in so many areas, highlighting the issues that already existed, that's the same case here. Issues like mode choice, like safety are, they mattered before when Go Boston 2030 was created, and they matter even more now. And so kind of in some ways, we do expect COVID to slow down aspects of the city's progress on Go Boston 2030, but in other areas, really to speed things up. So I want to dive in and start off with a few areas that we highlighted in our report about where the city is falling behind. And one of those areas is on their mode shift goals. So as I mentioned, the city had really ambitious goals around reducing the percentage of people who drive alone and significantly increasing the percentage of people who are taking public transit, who are walking, who are biking. And we really haven't seen any significant increase in any of those areas, and actually a slight decrease in the percentage of people taking public transit. That being said, there are some caveats. So one is that it's early. We're only 3 years in. Mode shift is kind of a big project. And also that this is only census data measuring commutes. And obviously people are traveling a lot more than just commuting. And so we've been really excited to see the city just a few months ago has significantly expanded their bike counts and the data that they're collecting every month. And they are able to show that more and more people are biking. And similarly, kind of when we're looking at specific projects and measuring the impact of them. So an example is the bus only lane that was put on Washington Street in Rosendale. The team measured a 4% increase in ridership after implementation, showing that this project is getting at the intended outcomes. And so it's really important to be measuring that before and after so that we can see the impact that projects are having on our plan goals. And then I do want to go back and talk about their target for work from home. So we were at 5% of Bostonians when the plan was released, and the target was to increase that to 6% by 2030. Obviously, this is going to look very, very different than kind of predictions and then what the goal was. And so I think this is a perfect example of Go Boston 2030 can't just sit on a shelf. It needs to be responsive to the things that are happening, like a global pandemic, and that we can adjust those targets, but still keep the overall goals intact, which are around reducing greenhouse gas emissions, increasing safety. And if that's done by more people taking transit or more people working from home, that's something that we can figure out in light of a new context. Another area where we've been disappointed in the city's progress is on their work on building out the bike network. So they had a target of having every home in Boston within a 5-minute walk of some kind of protected bike facility. And this map is showing the progress. They were at 20% of homes when the plan was released, and 3 years later, that's only increased to 26% of homes. They have only built out 9 miles of protected bike lanes since 2014, and the plan calls for 31 miles built within the first 5 years and an additional 60 by 2030. So they're way off track, and they've actually amended their targets. So since Go Boston 2030 was released, now they're saying that they're aiming for 15 miles of protected bike lanes within the first 5 years. So as I mentioned, the city kind of in their first phases of COVID response around transportation has prioritized quick building some aspects of the bike network in order to get folks to work. Also, a safe option that's not the T. I believe that we will be able to make the tea safe, but the truth is many people are going to be reluctant to take it. And we've already seen a huge increase in bike sales in Massachusetts. And so we are expecting to see many more folks biking later this year. And so again, this is just an example of like, if we had been farther along on building out the bike network, we would be in better shape now to respond to COVID. I do want to talk about some areas where the city has made really exciting progress. So one of those is on their Vision Zero numbers. So Vision Zero is the goal of having 0 traffic deaths or serious injuries. And they implemented this program right before Go Boston 2030 was released in 2016. And in the last 5 years, they have seen a 50% drop in the number of people who have been killed in traffic crashes. So from 21 people in 2016 down to just 10 in 2019. And we do expect that number to be low again this year because so many people aren't driving or traveling for so many months of the year. And also another kind of really exciting piece that came out of our analysis was around the this target that they had that every home in Boston would be within a 10-minute walk of either a key bus route stop or train station and a bike share station and car share location. And they really significantly increased this number. So from 42% of homes when the plan was released up to almost 70% today. And a big part of that is because of their huge expansion of bike share and of the Blue Bike system. And we were excited to hear, so right now Hyde Park is the only neighborhood in Boston that doesn't have bike share. And I was excited to hear in the recent hearing that that will be fixed this year. So I do kind of a point about this is that while it does increase travel choices for people, that's not the same as actually increasing access. Like just because you have a Blue Bike station within a 10-minute walk of your home doesn't mean that you then have a safe route to get to where you need to go. Or just because you have a bus stop around the corner, if the bus doesn't take you to where you need to go, or if it doesn't show up on time, that's not the same thing as actually giving you access to the opportunities and the services that you need. So kind of a separate section of our progress report is focusing specifically on the projects, the 33 early action projects. And we both gave a status update for all those projects and this evaluation. And I'm just going to go through some of the highlights. So one thing that's kind of really paying dividends already is the city's work on their public realm work. So they built these public realm guidelines. They hired a public realm director. They did a ton of like pop-ups and permanent things like pedestrian plazas. And that's also part of their COVID rapid response. Like you all might have seen that the city is planning to reallocate some like street and sidewalk space to restaurants to provide restaurants ways to so that people can dine outside and like be more distant from each other. And so this is a way that because the city already had kind of that framework in place about how to implement these pop-up plazas and things like that, they are off and running in terms of their rapid response to COVID. And then kind of on the other hand, something that we really dug into in our report was their progress on the projects around walk and bike friendly main streets, which was actually like the #1 most popular project out of all 58 when they did this huge survey to like tens of thousands of people in Boston. We were kind of finding that they were behind in implementation of those walk and bike friendly main streets districts, and kind of the efforts were piecemeal. There wasn't like a clear prioritization system. There wasn't a lot of community engagement involved. And so again, that's something that has become very, very relevant in this new context. Kind of one, because of safety. So we're seeing an increase in speeding and actually an increase in the rate of fatalities in Massachusetts, despite the actual levels of traffic being way down. So making it safe for people to get to the businesses that are, in their immediate neighborhood that they can walk to or bike to. And then the other aspect of this is small business recovery, which is now kind of that we're out of the or moving out of the stay-at-home phase that we're really focusing on, and obviously having vibrant and safe and pleasant Main Street areas are going to support that recovery. So one thing that was sort of a challenge around the creation of Go Boston 2030, the plan, and also certainly our report, was that many of the projects included are state-led and feature transit. And obviously the city has less control and impact on projects like that. So we did evaluate them differently. We evaluated the city on kind of the actions that they could take rather than like the overall state of the project. And a few that I want to just highlight. One, we're super excited to see the city propose this pilot for the Fairmount line that was approved and will go into service soon, which will bring additional service to the Fairmount line and will allow riders to use their Charlie card so that they can then transfer to the bus. But on the other hand, an area where we would really like to see more leadership from the city is around fare policy. So the MBTA right now is going through this thing called the Fare Transformation Project, where they're making their fare system cashless. You'll be able to use your phone to pay. There'll be like an account associated with your Charlie card or whatever. And this is a real opportunity to think about fare policy, things like low-income fares, and that's something that Livable Streets is fighting for and would love to see the city fight for as well. So Livable Streets is committed to releasing a progress report every 2 years going forward until 2030. And in November, I do want to point out and give credit that the city totally revamped their Go Boston 2030 website. And now it's really easy to see like all the different projects, and you can click on them and for many of them get more information about the project and the city's progress on it. So that's a resource for all of us and certainly a big part of their communication. And kind of next steps, what are we recommending for the city to get things back on track? So kind of as you've heard through this presentation, progress hasn't been perfect. So we do have some recommendations that I'm going to go through sort of quickly. So one, collect more data, expand data collection, and the bike count data that they've been doing more regularly just in the last little bit is super exciting to see and a great example, really important so that we can see the impact of our projects and how they're connected to plan goals. Also, as I've kind of mentioned a lot throughout this presentation, we want to make sure that Go Boston 2030 evolves with the current context. So I put a picture of a scooter on there because scooters aren't mentioned at all in Go Boston 2030 because they weren't really a thing when the plan was being developed. And you could do the same thing for coronavirus. We need to make sure that this plan fits our current context even as things change. We would also love to see the city communicate with the public more. So the reorganization of their website was a great start. We would like to see this updated regularly. It hasn't been updated since November. And kind of another wider recommendation is around transitioning from a piloting and piecemeal approach to implementation citywide. So you can see sort of with network projects like the bike network or multi-part projects like the walk and bike friendly Main Streets. Those are, it's not just one project, they include like 25 or 30 projects in one. And so really seeing the city kind of take a more systematic approach is it going to be important. Also more leadership on these projects that they're working with the state, particularly on transit projects, we would like to see, and making sure that the city's plans are well integrated with the state's plans. One thing that the city has done since the plan was released that has been a huge help is forming the transit team on BTD. So now there's dedicated staff in the transportation department, specifically working on things like bus lanes and communicating with the T. So that's been great to see. And then finally, ensuring that Go Boston 2030 goals are prioritized across all transportation projects. So there are things like the Suffolk Downs redevelopment or the Alston I-90 project that aren't included in Go Boston 2030. But, you know, as we get farther away from when the plan was developed, it's still very important to see the goals carry through and be applied to projects, even if they're not in the plan. So, okay. Next steps. Our plan has had to change, obviously. So we did a fair amount of community outreach to build our report, and we're intending to kind of go back out into each neighborhood and report back. And we're kind of still understanding what community engagement looks like these days. But we are committed to issuing a progress report going forward every 2 years, and are looking forward to opportunities like this where we can share the report virtually, and that you all can kind of help build this into the work that you're doing with the budget and other projects. So that's all that I have. Thank you so much. Here's a link to our report, which I'll send out via email. Also, you can reach me at louisa@livablestreets.info, and I also would love to open it up to any questions or comments that you all might have.
I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It was very helpful. I learned a lot. And one of the big concerns I have now is we're opening up restaurants, slowly open up restaurants, outside seating onto the sidewalks, but also possibly onto the street. What impact that has on pedestrian safety is a critical issue I focus on, but pedestrian safety has to be a part of the discussion when we're opening up restaurants, as well as enforcement of the current speeding regulations. And I think during this time, I think we need to reduce the speed limit. 25 miles an hour is so fast in our city and our neighborhoods that it's presenting a major problem.
Yeah, I think around the restaurants opening, pedestrian safety definitely is key around like creating clear delineation between vehicle travel lanes and kind of the pedestrian areas, but also this question of ADA accessibility access, that there's still going to be enough space on the sidewalks for people to travel, and also to travel physically distant from each other. Yeah, and in regards to the enforcing of speed limits, so Livable Streets and our Vision Zero Coalition partners have been fighting for state legislation that would allow for automated enforcement, so speed cameras and red light cameras. And I know I've had the opportunity to talk with many of you about that before, but that's something, again, that in the light of COVID, it's like when either police are occupied doing other tasks, or that it's not, especially during kind of the beginning of the stay-at-home order, when we didn't want to put them out on the street pulling people over for speeding, wouldn't it have been great to have speed cameras in place doing that enforcement for them?
Yeah, well, thank you. I have Vanessa from my staff is staying on. I have another meeting, but I just want to say thank you for allowing me to join your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn.
Thank you.
Hey, Louisa, great seeing you. Thank you as always for that thorough report. Like Eddie, I have a 2 o'clock Zoom call. I think all of our days are spent on Zoom call after Zoom call, but Justin's going to stick around for my team, and just appreciate your great work and advocacy, particularly during these very trying days. So great to see you. Thank you. My best to all of your colleagues, and thanks to all of our colleagues. Good to see you guys too.
Thank you. Sounds good.
Hi, Louisa. I'm
Hi.
sorry, I am running in from another meeting, so I missed most of I've scanned the report before, but I missed your presentation now, so I didn't get to hear the commentary that went along with it. I was wondering if you could, and so just if you already said this, just say you already said it, and I'll go back and figure it out, or Grace will fill me in. But as we're thinking about this post-pandemic future of more people getting in cars potentially because they're afraid of transit and being near others, it feels like, there's a body of work on making sure the T is safe both on frequency, dedicated bus lanes to boost that frequency, and just like the symbols of sort of public health of like hand sanitizer and all that, so T work. And then there's, I think, a massive interest in cycling. And so if we could even pick off a couple corridors to really prioritize. So again, you probably already said this, but along those lines of how can we ensure we're not entering this apocalypse of even more cars and congestion and pollution than before, what are like the 3 most urgent, like specific action items from the city? Is it like a dedicated bus lane on this stretch, or cycling, here that we could take care of that would really open that up?
Yeah, so Livable Streets and our advocacy partners are working on kind of specific recommendations around that now, that we're hoping to kind of draft general recommendations kind of from any municipality, because it's not just Boston that's like sort of like, what's our response here? But also I think focusing on yes, providing specific corridors for Boston. I think one thing that has really risen to the top in those conversations among advocates is like, let's use, and kind of the theme of this presentation too, is let's use the plans that we already have. We have the data, we know where the highest crash locations, like corridors and intersections are. We know where the job centers are and which corridors are important for getting people to commute on those safely. We have our priority corridors that we want to see built out with protected bike lanes. So let's use that information and then pivot to the quick build. But yeah, that's a great question and a great point. And we're cheered to see the city kind of lay out their initial phases of their streets response, and that they are planning to include some bus lanes and bike lanes, as well as these like pedestrianized areas for more space for restaurants and things like that.
Great. The last thing I'll say is that we, thank you so much to everyone who participated in the council hearing on this before. One big takeaway was that it'd be good to do a check-in on implementation, maybe a month from when the hearing was, so a couple weeks from now. I don't know how exactly that fits in the council schedule, and we will work on that, but if it made sense to check in about what some good markers might be kind of 1 month after the hearing, that would be really helpful.
That's great to know. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again for that great presentation. I was curious if you could give an example of, I like the recommendation around moving beyond pilots and piecemeal projects to more systematic approach. So wondering if you could give like an example or two of things that you see that we continue to do as just pilots that you'd like to see expanded more, or if you have any other examples of what that could look like moving to more of a systematic approach.
Yeah, so something that we were really focused on was all the great and new bus lane work that the city is doing. So I have to amend. So as I mentioned, this report was released in mid-March, and I was super excited to see on the budget hearing, the city's presentation for the budget hearing, they actually did include a slide showing sort of like a bus network plan, which is something that we explicitly asked for in our report and kind of knew that it existed internally, but not publicly. And so that's sort of an example of projects that are, yes, sort of always starting as a pilot, feel very piecemeal, and also in like building a network plan around it allows for better coordination, both internally, kind of between teams, the transit team, the active transportation team, because on some projects we're seeing sort of this conflict between like bike infrastructure and walking infrastructure, and then these bus lanes, when really it's like, let's not have all the active transportation and transit people fighting for space. Let's take some more space from cars, and then we can all have enough room. So that's definitely one example, but also, of course, having a plan, the city having a plan allows them to better communicate with external partners like the T, and that's really important when it comes to bus lanes too. So that's one example. And then, I mean, kind of the bike network plan, just, it's so, they're so behind. And that's a network project. And so, we have the plan. Let's build it.
Hi, Louisa. Thank you so much. I'm learning so much. I'm fairly new. I'm in Councilor Braden's office. I was really struck by the map of the 5 to 7 p.m. Popular biking corridors. And I wonder what stories are told in that data. A lot of our district, it shows up pretty high there. We have a relatively young population. I'm wondering if you can comment on demographics and anything else that interesting slide would tell you.
Yeah, so that's all data from the city that they actually, that's another thing that's changed since we released our report in March. So they had sort of quarterly bike count data available for 2016 and 2017. And then there was like sort of this large gap. And then I think it was in April that they released their 2018 and 2019 data and announced that they're going to be doing monthly updates. So I can send the link out also, but there's a lot of good information on the like Better Bikes or the bike page within the city of Boston. I don't believe that demographic data is included. They're kind of, I think it's using automatic bike counters. It's not like in-person counts, but I'm really excited to see them start to use that data as well. And I think that it is demonstrating, maybe you can't actually say mode shift, but it's certainly demonstrating an increase in the number of riders consistently. So
thank you.
Louisa, can I ask, sorry, let me see if I can, oh, there we go.
hi.
Hi. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to like whether Livable Streets has thought at all about which of the things that we want to do as more permanent things, like you can do in a temporary way that might allow us to test for the more permanent things. What I'm thinking about specifically, right, is like, you know, I'm very committed to more bike lanes and to like real protected bike lanes, right? But if there are stretches where we're not yet in a place to put that in, but we could do something temporary to create a bike lane, but like we still want it to be protected. I'm just sort of curious about, in terms of your point about using the moment, like what are the almost the sort of materials to make some of the things that we would want in the long term? Like which of those things feel like we could try them as kind of COVID response measures that you could roll out pretty quickly? So that's my question. I mean, I am encouraged. There's some, you know, there's some bike lane work on Boylston through Fenway in my district that's going ahead this summer, which is great because it's been so, I mean, as you know, so unsafe to bike out there. But I'm curious about that question of sort of like tactical interventions that like we might never before have tried in a tactical way. And just because we do have some of the bike lane processes, we're still going to need to go through a community process that is going to be like for the permanent infrastructure that's going to take a certain amount of time. And we also have this like acute need now. So I don't know if you have any thoughts.
I mean, you're like hitting the nail on the head for sure. I was in a meeting with other advocates this morning where we were talking about exactly this issue about like fighting for capital projects to continue moving forward, but what is that? But also the need for like temporary and rapid implementation now. So, I mean, I think that community process, yes, and I think also relying on the plan that's already been created, as I mentioned, like around the bike networks and knowing which corridors are important. Let's see, I totally lost my train of thought. I was like, I have 3 points to make.
You were talking about tactical things this morning with the other advocates.
Yeah. So I think getting this balance right between like not abandoning capital projects, but also balancing that with like the need for rapid response. And also I think this language of like temporary is like important to like follow, kind of, that some of these are going to be temporary measures, and then I don't know, this is like a favorite quote in advocate land, but the pilot is the process, that we're kind of having the opportunity here to sort of throw down a protected bike lane made with cones or barrels, or a bus lane made with cones, which is, you know, what we did in Rosendale on Washington Street, or Alston on Brighton Ave, and see how that goes. And that maybe that will kind of even support the public process that we hope will come after, understanding how that new infrastructure does or doesn't work, so that it can be made permanent. So I think it's exciting. I mean, in the context of like this horrible situation that we're in, that the city is like really doubling down on like these tactical and quick build measures, and that there's, you know, this imperative to get things done very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's
Great.
a good question.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
And thanks for all the work you guys do.
Yeah, thank you. I've been sort of not engaged directly with counselors through the budget process, but very excited to see the process and the questions that were being raised. And I hope that kind of as that process continues, this report can help support some of the work that you all are doing too. So I'm definitely available for kind of questions and more conversations if folks have those. And look out for more clear recommendations from us and our Vision Zero Coalition partners on more of this COVID response stuff. And if you have needs that you see that you want advocates to point to, let us know.
Great. Thanks. Thanks so much for the presentation.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Cool. Well, thank you all again so much for joining me. I'm certainly available for follow-up. And I really appreciate the opportunity. Dave, thanks so much for setting this up when we started planning it so long ago.
Thank you so much for actually doing this for us, and thank the whole team at Livable Streets.
I definitely will. Take care, all.
All right. Have a good day, everyone. Good to see you. Candace, do I have to do anything to